Hey, welcome back, everybody. Go ahead and turn on your cameras when you can. And we've just been talking about our sadness that we can't find the 1828 dictionary online anymore. So we'll have to use our apps or the big dictionary. Kind of sad. How's everybody doing? Hey, Hiram, how are you? Dallin, Aaron, hi. Hey, Aaron, is your sister in Idaho?
Right now I think she's probably in an airplane.
In an airplane to
Yeah.
Idaho. Wow, cool. Hey, Richmonds, how are you? Okay. Well, okay. So we don't have everybody here yet. Let's see, who are we missing? We're missing Naomi. Gracie and Andrew are here. Who else are we missing? We're missing Carter. And she's visiting. Did you ever meet Jace, right, Elijah?
Yeah.
So she is she is visiting. She's going to be staying at their house, at the Wright's house. They're good. She's good friends with Jace's sister. So that's where they'll be. I just lost. Oh, there it is. Okay. Let's begin. Enoch, will you say the prayer for us?
Yep. Dear kind and gracious Father in heaven, thank thee for this day. Thank thee that we are able to have this technology to come to class and from wherever we may be. Thank thee for all the many blessings. Please bless that we may have a good discussion and that we may find and apply the principles of truth. Thank thee for all thy many blessings. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. All right. Great. Okay, what I want to do today is I want to talk about a few of your ideas of what you liked in the Declaration of Independence, but then I want to go into looking for the first principles. And if we need to define those, that's great. We'll go into that. And then the principles that flow from those first principles. We're going to really try to understand that today. I have a cute little video that I took of my grandson over the weekend of him. He's 2 years old, putting together a puzzle. I may use that. I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that we understand by the end of today that we really have clarity in what first principles are and principles that flow from them. Because if you understand those two things, you will be able to read any document for any kind of government, and you'll be able to practice that, pulling out the first principles and principles that flow from that. And you'll be able to decipher what is right and what is not right when it comes to first principles. And but first of all, I just want to go through this. What stuck out to you in this Declaration of Independence? There any, just look over it and see what you've underlined and what stuck out to you?
I liked, first of all, that whenever he was stating something, he said that it was unanimous, like it was the decision of the people, and that's really the authority that gave him the ability to write this document.
Yeah. Gives us power. People have the power to dissolve a government. Okay, what else?
I just really loved how it was always calling on God, saying, because of our duty to God, we have to abolish this form of government because it is hurting instead of healing or protecting.
Awesome. Was that at the end? Or is it?
Well, it's actually through it all. Like if
Yeah.
you, so it's not a specific place, but
Yep. All right. Good. I love that. What else stuck out to you?
I think one thing that doesn't get a lot of attention in the Declaration of Independence is actually like the grievances section, where they list like 27 reasons, I think, why they're separating. And that's pretty important. I mean, we love our like philosophical preamble and the resounding conclusion at the end, but the actual meat of the Declaration of Independence is saying, like that, giving out the specific reasons why they're separating. And I like how in each of these examples, they're pretty logical about it. Like they're not very biased. They're like, this is obviously not. I mean, they set the principles on how they're like analyzing these grievances before, but they are, I don't know, they're not very idealistic. They're not very conceptual in this. They're very concrete. They're like, okay, you did this, you did this, you did this. And that's why we're leaving you.
Glad you brought that up because we are going to have an activity on the grievances, picking out. Today, we're going to, after we talk about first principles and principles, we are going to look at those grievances and we're going to find out why or what first principle are they breaking. I shouldn't say they, I should say King George breaking. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's where we need to look most often is we need to be clear in the principles, right? In the preamble and in the conclusion, but we also need to look at the grievances to say, okay, what are we missing here? What is it he's breaking? And that way we can be clear in seeing what's going on around us. So thank you for bringing that up. Anything else that sticks out to anybody?
I was going to say nearly the same thing as Elijah, but I'm going to add when they were going through these things, I was thinking like they were sentencing him to like a life of prison or something, like they were in a court. Just he was being, it was just funny as they listed these things, like the things he was guilty of. That's what I had in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, like they're really putting him through the ringer. This and this and this, they're being the judge almost. I like it. Good. Anything else, Enoch?
I just really like the example it gives that you have to be clear on why you're splitting and that they have tried everything they can. Like a lot of people nowadays seem to just jump to conclusions and say, this is what we need to do without listing reasons of why they're doing it and making sure you do all you can peacefully or whatever to change it before you jump to violence.
I love that. And that helps us realize how important speeches like Patrick Henry's last week was so essential, because his speech is representative of many speeches being given all throughout the country at that time. And yeah, they had tried everything. Doing all you can peacefully. I'm just going to write a note here because I hadn't put that on this document, and I think that's important. Awesome. Good. Anything else? Okay. Those were good comments. All right. One thing I'd like to talk about is that, would you call it the third paragraph? If you call that first line a paragraph, So this is the big, huge paragraph before the grievances, when it says we hold these truths. It says we hold these truths to be self-evident. What does that mean?
Obvious and apparent to everyone.
Yeah. But I have an issue with that. 2,500 years ago, Aristotle's writing, and he's talking about self-evident truths as well. But he says that they still have to be learned. And if you go over to France at this same time of the Declaration of Independence, you have people who don't know what those rights are, these self-evident truths. So how do you reconcile that? How can he say that these truths are self-evident when people in other places who have not been taught these truths of life, liberty, property, well, I guess life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? How do you reconcile that they're self-evident? Enoch?
I feel like if anyone really takes a minute and thinks about what is just and unjust for themselves, like if someone were to be doing this to me, would I still say that's okay? And it makes it more self-evident. Like if people were taking away my property, then I would know that that's wrong. Like if, in a way, America was taking property from the king, quote unquote. And so he felt like that was wrong, but in reality, it was them defending their own property to begin with.
Okay.
So he already knew that principle, though he had skewed his understanding.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Carter?
I agree with Enoch mostly, but I do want to counter with this. In China, nobody owns property, so they can't really say my property is being taken away from me. And while it's like common sense that there's certain things that can't be taken away that could be considered property, and that helps with the self-evidence of those rights and truths. But there's places where people don't own property, so they can't. That's an argument some people use.
But they still know if they get kicked out of their house and are on the street, they know that they're being suffering and it's wrong, even though they never technically owned it.
Okay.
You know that. How do you know that they know that it's wrong? They might just accept that as a fact of society. Like it's the same with like rejection. Like, you know, you might feel like you're suffering from that. Like, ah, dang, that sucks. But like most people don't think, or at least healthy people don't think, oh man, the problems with like society, like that's an injustice. I should never be rejected, even though I'm suffering. So like when people suffer, that doesn't always equate to them knowing that it's intrinsically wrong. They just know that they're suffering, and that's just a fact of life.
I have talked to people. I recently talked to someone who left communist China lived through the four olds, the communist. And then I've also talked to 2 escapees from North Korea. And they all said that they were unhappy and had a hard life because they had no freedom. And they not always recognized it, but as soon as they tasted it, they knew it was true. Because the person from China, Lily Tong Williams, one of her friends was an American student who was at an apartment, but showed I think it's Declaration, maybe, I don't know, one of the founding documents, and she just wanted more and more and more from that moment on because she knew it was true.
Yeah, while it's really inspirational, it's kind of like counterexample of it being self-evident, because like she didn't know before, and only until she experienced that of like, oh, this is what it could be, then it becomes more self-evident, but it's not a truth that proves itself without other validation or other data. Like she had to experience a different perspective to have that contrast.
It's just because they're looking the wrong way doesn't mean it's not self-evident. Like if you're looking at the shadow besides looking behind you at the actual thing making the shadow, it just means you don't understand it. But I do get your point that it makes more self-evident when you taste it. But the fact is, she was looking for something, and when she found it, it made sense.
Yeah. Sometimes I think we feel an essence of something, but because we're not really clear. I mean, if I go down the street 7 houses away, my mom lives there. She's 80, almost 80 years old. And she has never really known clearly what first principles are and these self-evident truths. She hasn't really taken or paid the price to understand them. I have a brother who Jolene knows, and probably Jacoby too. And Dallin knows too. He lives in China and has lived pretty much off and on since 2014, maybe. But he's been there actually since well before the pandemic and has only been able to come home once because of I'm going to make a point. Because of the quarantine that he has to quarantine for a month and then quarantine or 2 weeks and then quarantine there for a whole month when he goes back. So it's a horrible process for him, but he used to understand rights and we used to have some great discussions, but now that he's been over in China with this social credit that they use and the kind of government that they have, he's gotten used to that and he really likes that he's so controlled. He doesn't see, he's been blinded by the inherent self-evident truths that Thomas Jefferson is talking about. And so I guess, I don't know if we can reconcile it. I just know that when you are learning truths and you understand them through history, they're clearer to you and they're more self-evident. My mom lives in this great country that's got a lot of freedom, but she doesn't fully understand them. And that's, I would have to say, a lot of people. So I don't know if we can reconcile this idea that they're self-evident unless you are a person who is studying principles and studying truth, and then you can understand it. I mean, can someone please disagree with me? Am I wrong?
I still feel like they're self-evident, even if it's not to a true extent, but they still know the shadow, even if they don't know the full extent. And so in a way, it's still self-evident that, yeah, these things are right, even though they don't understand why they're right. They don't understand how to get to that point, but I still feel like they eventually, at least the shadow is self-evident. And if they look into it, then it will become clear.
The energy is rising. I love this. Hiram.
I just want to say that your comment made me think of, the contrast between the Nephites and the Lamanites in the Book of Mormon. The Nephites, once having already seen the light, when they turned against it, became more hardened than the Lamanites, who had never known what was right. And then the Lamanites, in turn, when they saw and experienced the true gospel, they became more devoted and more righteous than the Nephites, because they knew how evil their previous life was.
Okay, love it. Aaron? I love that comparison, by the way.
So Enoch's comment reminded me of natural law. So even if you don't know why it's right or unjust, then you still know that's unjust because it's natural law.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else?
I think this question of self-evidence really goes back to our previous discussions on like axioms and axiomatic thinking. Because like you were saying earlier, sorry, I'm a bit stuffy. At a certain point, you're just gonna have to believe something to base your other beliefs off of. Like there's a network that your beliefs are off of, but there's also kind of a structure or a hierarchical structure. And the value of equality, at least for Jefferson, was grounded in this value of like God, and that was grounded in another one. It kind of goes deeper, but at a certain level, you can't get any more. I don't know. You can't refine it anymore. You have to believe in something, and I think that at that point it becomes. I guess it may appear to be self-evident because you just have to, at a certain level, rely on something past what you can observe, past what you can reason. But it doesn't make it universally self-evident. So in that way, it's not really self-evident. What's interesting about the progression of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is like with each like word, it kind of gets more broad or less self-evident, I feel like. Because I feel like when most people are born, they have one instinct, and that's basically to survive. And then as they grow and develop more, they kind of can better understand their
Mhm.
autonomy, and
Mhm.
that makes them strive for more freedom, I guess. And as they can better understand their autonomy and their control over things, I guess they tend to want to be more happy. Everyone like that's it's almost as self-evident in that respect. But I don't think that I don't think that those values or those virtues are self-evident, because there's always cases where people are not pursuing those things. And so in that way, Jefferson's grounding, and the founding fathers in general, are grounding these virtues as self-evident based on this axiomatic claim that, God is real and that he wants us to be happy. Those things can't be refined further. And so you have to ground it in something that ultimately can't be proven.
Love it. Dallin had his hand up. Do you still have something, Dallin, that you want to say?
Kind of. It's changed about 7 times during that.
I love
So,
it.
I was thinking now that like he says we hold these truths to be self-evident, and he's not saying everyone understands right now, but by the end of your life, don't you think that you would understand that all people are equal in the end, that we do need life, liberty, and pursuing happiness is going to be better than anything else? By the end, you'd understand that, I think.
Yeah.
Even if it's just on your deathbed. And he's not, again, saying that it would be that everyone knows from birth. He's just saying that they are truths. I was also thinking about the all men are created equal, about self-evident. I know a lot of people back then would have disagreed,
Mhm.
but I'm just going to try to get the closest relation I can. So criminals, like someone who had killed a man in cold blood, like that would be lesser. They're not just the same as us anymore. Like, would you guys be fine with that person being whipped, or just they have to work every day for the rest of their lives just because they're lesser and they did that? I'm just trying to get as close as I can, because it just
Talking
seems
about the
wrong to me in
Southerners.
every way. Yeah, I just wouldn't be fine with that either way. So what do you guys think?
Yeah. You've got a good point there. Enoch, I know you have not a question, not an answer for Dallin, but you've got something else that you're just burning
Yeah.
to say.
That goes back to Elijah's thing. I don't think a baby's only goal is to survive. I think that's probably their priority until they can get more stable. But if a baby is unhappy, if they're sad, if they're neglected, they feel forgotten, and then it gets that way. So I feel like in a child, they do know that they're self-evident, but as they get older, the philosophies of the world or the culture can cloud that view. Because when you're a little kid, if this is your toy, then it's your toy, and you don't want anyone else to mess with it. it's your property, whether or not it really is or not. But I think you know those principles from birth, and then as you go on, you can either lose that or get a better understanding of why you believe it.
Yeah. And I think I'm hearing from everybody, and I think we're all agreeing in many ways. We're just getting more clear that these truths are always going to be true. There is no way they will ever not be true. And another idea is that we feel them. We feel them to be true. Like as a 2-year-old, if Enoch took something from his twin brother, let's say, I know you don't have a twin brother, but I have twins and I'm watching them right now go through this discovery of self-evidence truths about property. And it's so funny. And they will take something from each other, and this one will cry and he'll get mad and he'll go and take it back. And then there'll be a fight because they know and they feel this was something I picked up. I made it mine. But they're not clearly thinking of the principle in it. They're just feeling it, if that makes sense. So I think we're all on the same page here, but we're all also realizing that education, this third thing, this education into the first principles and principles are essential if we are to be clear in our grievances, if we're to be clear in understanding that those are self-evident truths. So I think there's 3 things. It's always going to be true. We have a feeling about it, but we need to be educated in it. And like my brother, who has forgotten that education, his ideas have, his feelings, his understanding has become clouded, like you're saying, Enoch. So I think, did I cover, I generally covered everything, but I know there's lots of nuances that we can go into, but I think we understand now that they are self-evident, but they do require us to pay the price to think, to really, really understand. And that's what we're going to do today. I want to attempt to draw something. I have it here, but it's all in Spanish because I drew it up for some people that I was speaking Spanish to. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen. There's a whiteboard, right? Yeah. I'm going to attempt, and I want to see if this can help us to understand a little bit. So let's say we have a first principle. Okay. And what's one of those self-evident truths? It's a first principle. Anybody want to offer?
Life.
Hey,
Start
great.
with the first one.
Yeah, thank you. So life is, this is so cumbersome. Okay, it's the best it's going to get. Life is this first principle. Okay, I'm just going to put an FP, first principle. You can't change it. You can't break it down anymore. We have all been given the right to life. You just can't break that down anymore. I guess you could say it comes from God, but it's that particular thing cannot be broken down. It's been given to us by our Creator. Then let's say we have some principles that come out of that. Okay, what are some principles that flow from the right to life? Let's say I can, my husband has a concealer's weapon, license for concealed weapons. How do you say that? Something like that.
Concealed carry permit, is
Yes.
that it?
Because he goes mountain biking up in the mountains, and he has seen mountain lions before, and he wants to make sure that he protects his life. So one of the principles that flow from the right to life is to be able to, he wants to be able to carry a gun that he can use to protect his life if he needs to while he goes mountain biking. Somebody just chatted, and I got to open up the chat and see what it was. Oh yes, poor guy. But Dave has never killed a cougar. So, but anyway, that's one of the principles that flows. So let's just say that's the principle here. And we're going to say that this principle goes through this refraction of light.
In
Okay.
another one of my classes, sorry to interrupt, one of the kids in it did a persuasive essay on on our right to have guns and weapons to protect ourselves. And he was saying like it's a God-given right that it is just ours to have. Like we have the right to protect ourselves.
Yeah, we do. So that would be another principle another principle that goes along with this.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt too. I think one thing is important though to understand is the principle isn't actually that we have the right to defend ourselves with guns, because that's more of an application of a different principle. The principle that we're talking about that stems out of life is the right for self-protection, right? Self-protection in the form of carrying like a concealed weapon is more of an application of a more concrete, kind of more abstracted principle, rather than just say you can only defend yourself with a gun. That's the principle. That's actually the application.
Well, so yeah, we're going to get to that because I can see where you're going. I'm looking at it. Oh, dang it. I hate it when that happens. Okay. We'll get there. So this is called, I'm going to put up here, this is called a refraction of light. Do you know what happens when you've got a refractor that refracts light? What happens?
Rainbow.
Yeah, you have all of the colors are totally separated into their own color. They're not together anymore. So we'll get to that in just a second. Okay, this would be inspiration. Okay, so this is a refraction of light. So the principle is carrying a gun will help me protect my life today. Okay, so I'm going to live that principle. I'm going to go through, I'm taking that principle through my own situation, my beliefs in it, and my inspiration of what I need to do to protect my life. Okay, I'm going to do that. And out of that comes, okay, we're just focusing on this one principle, right? But out of that comes, all of these applications that I can do on how I'm going to apply this principle of having a gun to protect my life today when I'm biking. But there could be lots of different applications in that. I'm going to get a concealed weapons license. I'm going to get maybe not a concealed weapons license, but another weapons license. I'm also going to just take my bow and arrow. It doesn't matter. It matters that the application is how you're going to do it. The principle is what you're going to do. I'm going to take a gun with me to protect my life. That's what I'm going to do. How I'm going to do it is a different thing. Okay. And
Wouldn't you say you're going to take a weapon to protect your life, like Elijah was saying earlier? Because if you're taking a bow, that's no longer following the weapon.
Yeah, if
So
I'm going to take a bow, then then the principle is a weapon. Yes. But sometimes we get confused by principles, but this is principles and applications, but this is the why. Okay, this is why. I probably should use that text box. This is the what that I can do. It's the what I can do. And this is the how I'm going to do it. Okay. Okay, that is so ugly. But anyway, so the founders had their why. They knew they'd been given life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They know what they can do. They can now write a declaration. They can now, there's tons of principles here. They can write the grievances. They can whatever. And how they're going to apply all of this ends up being a war. Now, everybody can see this differently because of the situations we have and the beliefs we have and the inspiration we have. And that's what determines our how we're going to do things. Does anybody have any questions or disagreements with this?
I get what you're saying, though. I feel like some situations and beliefs, they believe in a how will work, but in the end, that how won't work because in the end, their situations have, or what their beliefs have clouded, and it no longer works. And it's because it's not true.
Yeah. And maybe they've got the first principle right, but they don't have the principles that flow from it that are right. And then they're applying some other broken principle. So we have to kind of go through this whole process to get to the truth and act on truth. I'm going to stop. I wonder, is there any way I can, let me see something.
I just want to say one thing before you close out. I think one of the things that makes this kind of process more scary, or at least more difficult, is the process by which we get to that why and what. Those fundamental principles and those principles are also dependent upon, situation, beliefs, and inspiration. And so it's not a lateral process where everyone starts out with these self-evident truths. People are taught different things. People believe different things innately. People just have different experiences. And based on that, even those fundamental principles are completely different to different people. And so, even with this example you're giving with like the right to self-protection, like them, it seems simple if it's just one person. But as soon as you introduce more people into that group, does your right to self-protection outweigh the right of someone else's right to self-protection? Like the case of self-defense, like it gets more messy, obviously. That's not a very complicated thought, but yeah. Difficult about this is that reflection of light happens at every process in this kind of funnel.
It does. And this is why over here, this is what causes most all the conflicts. We should put that here. Let's see here. Is that going to work? Yeah. So this side, oh man. Cause of all conflicts is how people apply. Oops, I was meant to do that. Oh man, this makes me mad. Never mind. I can't move that anymore. But yes, cause of all conflicts. I did put this up on I copied it and put it up on our board. So I'm going to close out. How do I do this? There we go. So I've got it on the whiteboard so we can use it again. Now, here I'd like to show a little video of how little Henry, my little not Patrick Henry, but my little grandson was putting together this puzzle. And when he was putting together this puzzle, I want you to look at some principles that you can come up with just by watching him. It's 3 minutes. I've lost you. I can't see you. I can only see Henry. Oh, there you are. Share sound. Okay, you're going to notice I'm speaking a little Spanish to this little guy, and I do sound like a grandma sometimes, but I want you to look for principles that can apply to this whole thing that we're talking about, okay? And then write them down, and then we'll share them afterward. Okay, start. Henry, ahí. Ajá. Dar vuelta. Darle vuelta. Sí. ¿Quieres ayuda? ¿Quieres ayuda? Okay. Vení. Ponelo, mira. Ponelo. Yay. Yay! Okay, what did you notice? What principles?
Guys, we're supposed to teach him that you do the outsides first.
Okay, so that's an application, Dallin, but yes, okay. Not everyone does that application, but that's good. Okay, anything else?
Nick, you can go ahead. You had your hand up first.
Okay, but I'm not sure exactly how to say this, but he was only seeing part of the picture because he's always trying to align the bump with this one, but not seeing that there's multiple that had to connect. Or when he did see that, he was only seeing the part he knew and understand, but he wasn't able, until he was shown, he wasn't able to apply that to where it belongs.
Yeah, even though it's self-evident for many of us who know, it's not for him yet. Yeah, okay, keep going. Who else?
I think one of the most interesting parts of that video is when he cries, because he's established a history of how he solves things. So in the beginning, when he's got that first piece, he's problem solving, he's confused, and so he asks for help, right?
Yeah.
And then once he's kind of pointed out, he puts the piece and he figures it out. Then the second time he doesn't get it right, he has the same process. He gets confused, he asks for help, and you point it out, and he tries it and it doesn't work. And what's interesting about that is as soon as it doesn't work, he starts to cry because he has this kind of inability to depend on his only working model. His working model is I try it, doesn't work, I ask for help, it works. And as soon as that model is useless, he's completely in agony. He's like, I have no working model for how to solve this problem. And so that was really, really interesting to watch.
Yeah. Well, and the first time I take that corner puzzle piece down to the corner, he pushes it back into the center. And so he got some help from me, but he didn't accept that help. He wanted that, let's say, principle to fit right here. But I do like what you're saying too. That pattern. Anything else? Anybody else notice anything? Understanding principles is similar to a puzzle. We have to understand it, always, just like Dallin says, the edges always have a flat side on a puzzle, right? They always do. We know that principle. It makes it easy for us to understand how to put together a puzzle. We also know to look for colors on one piece and on the other piece. There are several principles on how to put a puzzle together, and they will always have to be in the same order, just like first principles. They just always have to be. And when we can understand that, then we can begin to understand how other things fit. And it's a learned process. Like Aristotle said 2,500 years ago, he said, yes, they're self-evident, but you still have to be educated to see them and to really clearly understand them. Anybody else have any ideas or thoughts that they want to add? Okay, so we have 27 grievances, people. And what we're going to do for the first three is we're going to do the first three together, and then we're going to divide up into 3 groups, and each group will do 8 of them. But what we're going to do is we are going to kind of write out in our own words on the margin what these are. What in our own words, what is he saying here? And then we are going to look at the first principle of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We're going to use those things, even though Samuel Adams says later, and so does John Adams and others, James Madison says this pursuit of happiness can look like property, like the right to property and the right to conscience. Okay, so the pursuit of happiness can also be property and conscience. So life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And we're going to say, okay, it is coming from that first principle of, let's say it's the right to life or the right to liberty. And then we will be able to see how that principle is breaking, or how this grievance is breaking that first principle. So we're going to do the first 3 together just so we can see how we're doing this. So who would like to say, in your own words, what is the first one saying? And maybe what we need to do, take about 1 minute and just number all of these to 27. Let's just do that really quickly first. Take a minute and all of you printed yours off, right? Okay, go ahead and take a minute to number those grievances. There's 27 of them. We just lost somebody. When you're done, go ahead and let me know in the chat box by typing in done.
This is just an idea, but since we're all working on this together, we could just put it in the class notes as well. So it's easy to reference to kind of put something underneath.
Oh, that's a great idea. So do you have it up ready that you can copy from? Copy and paste? I mean,
Yep.
that'd be great if you could do that because you're ready to go.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you. And they're all there. That's awesome. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, let's do the first one then. What would you say in your own words? So what we want to do up here, I want to make some, so we want to do here's another principle about a keyboard. If you have your fingers on the wrong letters, you're going to type the wrong things. Put in own words. And then we want to look for the first principle. I'm just going to do this. Whoops. It corresponds to. And how it breaks it, if that makes sense, if it breaks the first principle. All right, in your own words, how would you say the first one? Does anybody know what this means? Assent, like basically approves. Should I be sharing my screen?
Jacoby had her hand up.
Oh, thank you, Jacoby. Sorry. Thank you. What?
I looked up the word assent the other day, and it's like to agree or conquer. So he's basically refusing his agreement to the laws they've come up with.
Does everybody agree with that? I think that looks great. Okay, so now let's go. What first principle out of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness would it be breaking?
Liberty.
Yeah, I think that's good. Do you, does everybody agree with that? Is there something, I mean, can it also, interestingly enough, some of the first principles kind of go together. Can it also be breaking the pursuit of happiness?
I think really all of these grievances besides like a few, you can really kind of just argue that they could be all three of them. I mean, like you're saying, they converge and overlap so much that it's almost the same thing when it gets down to the actual application. So yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's really threatening their life. That specific one, it may be. I mean, if we break it down to certain principles, if it's hurting somebody, we can. But yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, so how is it taking away their liberty, and how is it taking away their pursuit of happiness? Is it kind of like a circle? Is it like going back up to A? They're not getting agreement from him, right? Maybe that's what we have to do, is kind of maybe go around in that circle.
Talked about surrendering your individual rights to enter society, I think it was. So like when everyone surrenders their own individual will to kind of this, for lack of a better word, general will, there's kind of this implicit agreement that like neither will infringe upon like their own surrendering of that will. And so when you have an unequal balance, it's an infringement of liberty, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you, Sa. Thank you, Rousseau. Awesome. Okay, let's go to the second one. How would you put that in your own words?
I think it means that he's refused like local governments to refuse to allow them to act somewhat independently, that he has complete sovereign control, even though the local governments may know what's best for the people they govern.
That's awesome. Okay, what first principle is he breaking?
Is he breaking liberty since they're denied the right of self-government on a local level?
Yeah. Awesome. And how is he breaking it? You know what? Let's not answer that, because it's just going right back up to A again. So let's just do the A and B. Okay, so I'm going to go back up here and I'm just going to say, take that off, up in the instructions, put in own words, and look for the first principle it corresponds to. Okay, let's do this third one. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. Carter.
I had it and then it left. I forgot what I was going to say.
It's going to come back.
Should. He doesn't support government by the majority, and he won't support representation for anybody. He doesn't agree with either.
That sounds like a little like somebody we've read before. I'm going to say Rep Gov. How's that? It's interesting that that decided to capitalize because I had a period. Awesome. So what first principle is he breaking? Lib. We're just going to get short here. Lib. Okay, now we have, I'm gonna just break you up into 3 groups. However it does it, because I haven't even thought about doing, I have not been a tyrant to direct exactly how I want you to be. So I'm just gonna let the free market of my little button to figure out where you're gonna go into your groups. But I want the first group, group number one is going to do 4 through 11. The second, group 2 is going to do 12 through 19. And group 4 is going to do the last 8. So let me do this breakout group. And we're just going to do what we just did together. Breakout rooms, do 3. How come I can't make this into 3 rooms? Oh, there, I wasn't in the right place. Assign, automatically create. So room number 1, these people are going to do 4 through 11, Carter, Danny, Elijah, and Gracie. And be really careful because Gracie talks a lot, so she might take over in that group. I'm just kidding. I'm actually amazed with how much Gracie knows and keeps inside. So let her talk. Group number 2, Aaron, Dallin, Jacoby, and Ryan. So you're going to do numbers 12 through 19. And group number 3, only 3 people in this one, Andrew, Enoch, and Hiram. The 3 of you, we're going to do the last 8. I'm going to open all the rooms up. Oh, and we'll come back in about maybe 20 after. Okay. Sorry, I didn't know that she was going to say that. How are you guys doing?
Good. We're on 23. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Are you writing them on the class notes?
Oh no, I've just been putting them in my pamphlet, but I can transfer.
Oh, that's, yeah. Have either somebody else can do it or whatever you guys do. Great. Okay. Do you have any questions?
No, I think it's smooth sailing.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks.
I just looked up the word quartering, and it's basically saying that they're taking away their homes and like places of where they live and stuff. So I think maybe this one would be property.
Or maybe both, because you are still denying liberty by taking property. But property, yeah. Aaron, do you want to read number 15?
Carter, you want to read the 7th one?
Sure.
So
He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their immigrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands.
What do you think that one's talking about?
He's making it purposely hard to
How does it feel to be ripped out of your place? Ah, I hate that. Go ahead.
I was literally mid-sentence and it was like, session is being ended.
I hate that. That's one thing that I don't like about this is that, well, it's just the way it's going to be, because if you were in a class in a regular brick and mortar edifice, I would probably just, say, okay, I know you haven't finished, but let's come back to class. Okay. What? No, we don't have any time to go through all that we did, but you had some experiences, some aha moments today, some experience. I know you did. What, can you share some of those? Who would like to share? I'd love to hear from every one of you. What was your takeaway from this class today? Dallin.
Well, we had a very talkative group, but we noticed that oftentimes liberty was at least one of the things being breached, at least in our section. And I had kind of brought up the point of wondering, like, this is open for debate, but if they had had more problems with Britain, but they hadn't included them because all of ours absolutely fit in with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and then property, or like taking those away. All of ours did. So I wonder if there were more problems that didn't exactly fit into that group that they were taking away, so they didn't include them. I've been wondering that, or maybe this is all of them and they did all fit. But
so you're suggesting that maybe as they were thinking of these grievances, they had to check them with the first principles to see if they fell into that category, and if not, they were probably done away with.
because I'm sure that there are plenty. Yeah, I am saying that I'm sure that there were plenty of like more petty things, like smaller things that they were just frustrated with, more detailed, but they put in like the biggest ones and the ones that did fit with that.
I
At least
love
that's what
that.
It kind of
seems like to
seems
me.
like this is the conclusion of a persuasive essay. Like it's the knockout punch. You give all the evidence in your favor and you save everything else for above where you're like refuting it,
Love that. Yeah, that's really paying the price to really hone down on the things that were that aligned with first principles. I love that. What else was your takeaway, Enoch?
At the end of our group, we were discussing a little bit, is it possible to violate only one of the first principles? Like we've been talking like, well, this one falls under liberty and life. This one falls under, it's always at least two and usually all of them. Like, is
Yeah.
it possible to only violate a single principle?
Yeah, you'll have to take that away, Enoch, and figure that out. That's a good question, Hiram.
So my thought was right when I got cut off was that all three of these like divinely given rights, liberty, property, and pursuit of happiness, they are all kind of like subgroups of one of the greatest rights our Heavenly Father has given us, and that is free agency. And so I think that's how they're all kind of interrelated, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, agency is also another first principle. I love it. And a way, it's actually, okay, agency is a doctrine and all doctrines are first principles, but not all first principles are doctrines. So yeah, I love how you made that connection. Aaron and then Dallin.
So in our group, we were talking about how like every one of these had like a little bit of all three, and we were wondering like, is this just all the same principle? And then it made me think that it's not all the same principle, but they all go in hand, like they all go hand in hand. Like for the pursuit of happiness, you need to be alive and free to pursue happiness. But just because you have the pursuit of happiness doesn't give you life. It's
Yeah.
one way, but not the other. They're not the same thing,
Oh, I
but
like that.
very, very similar.
I like that. That's a great takeaway. Dallin.
I was gonna ask, like, is free agency or free will more than life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Is it
Say-
something more or different?
Say that again.
Is free will
Okay.
or free agency different or more than life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Because I feel like those three things kind of sum it up pretty well. So I was going to ask, do you guys think that free will is something more than that or different?
I'll let everybody answer. So agency has everything to do with any action we take that starts out with thought and follows all the way through action. So agency is a doctrine that covers all our choices. And pursuit of happiness is more of the, I'm not going to say secular way, but so there's only one doctrine from God, and it's the doctrine of Christ. But there's many points of that doctrine, and one of those points is agency, which is also all of that doctrine with all of its points is a first principle. When you look at the founders who did not have the restored gospel, it was going to come just a few years later, right? Just like 30 years later, 40 years later, I guess, 55 years later. They didn't have the full restored gospel given to them, but they knew that there is that pursuit of happiness. They also understood free will, which I think it just meshes with it, but they used the words, the syntax. So we're talking syntax here. They used the syntax pursuit of happiness. But that's a good question. I don't know if that answered it. By the way, that diagram that we used today can be used for doctrine, principles, application, going through that refraction of light. So it can be used for that as well. We've got 1 minute left, and I just wanted to really quickly turn you on to the next two documents we're going to be reading. Remember that in the reading packet, I don't know why I did this, but it seems like I gave you letters or excerpts of letters about the Articles of Confederation, which a few weeks ago, I think, I sent to you an email that has the Articles of Confederation document. That's what I want you to read. So these, what is it? 8 pages that were in your reading packet. You're welcome to read them, but they're not it's not what is required. So you are to read the Articles of Confederation, which was written while our country was at war with Britain. It was during, it was in the middle. It was written then. And it was to try to fix the problems that our country was having with not getting enough help, not getting enough supplies, it reminds me of Pahoran and Captain Moroni, kind of the situation that there wasn't good communication, there wasn't the help that was needed. So the Articles of Confederation was put in place to help fix those problems. But then later they realized it didn't fix them because they didn't have a good balance of government. So then they wrote the Constitution over a course of 4 months of bickering and debating, but always with the motive of finding truth with each other, not trying to be right, but trying to find truth. So I love their example of arguing to find the truth. And they came up with a Constitution, which is pretty much the most perfect document we have on the earth governmentally. Not perfect according to the government that's going to be here in the millennium, but according to what man can put together with the help of God. So look at those two. The study guide is going to have you look at the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and compare it to the Constitution. So again, kind of short readings, but mental work, let's say, like painful. So don't wait until the last minute to read this. You commit to reading a little every day and doing this. So any questions for next week? Okay, look for first principles also. Just don't forget that one. That's a good one. Thank you so much for coming, everybody.